Holy shit! They actually went there! Guys, no matter what happens on Arrow or Legends of Tomorrow, this just shows that the DCU TV series has forever changed and nothing will ever be the same. Hey guys, come over the season finale of The Flash, Season 2, Episode 23, The Race of His Life, and I am in shock of this episode. I mean, look, I knew this episode was going to be really good, because based on last year's finale and things like that, but this season hasn't been nearly as good as last season. I definitely will say that. I don't think this season has been up the same quality as last season, or even as last season was at this point. Last week's cliffhanger was really great. I will say as a whole, besides what you guys really want me to talk about, because I really want to talk about that and just kind of just go all out with that, I have to talk about everything else that happened this episode. And as a whole, I don't think this episode was on the same level as last year's finale, but it was still a great finale, and there were still some incredible scenes in this episode. There was some great closure as well, but then that cliffhanger is just so good. I mean, it's so good where we are headed next season. I am so happy we're going in the direction that we are. But let's just get into this episode because there is a lot to talk about. Definitely, there were a lot of really great scenes here, and this episode focused a lot more, though, on Barry and, Barry's central conflict, and less of him dealing with, taking down Zoom, because that obviously was the big part of it, but also focused on how Barry deals with this grief and really things like that. So let's get into this. We start literally right where last episode left off, where Barry's screaming in anger as Zoom kills Henry right in front of him. He goes to his father, pleads with him not to leave him, but Henry is gone, and Zolomon reminds Barry that family is a weakness and figures that he feels the anger. He insists that now the two of them are the same. Barry slams him against the wall, and Zoom tells him to use his anger like he did, streaks across the street, and Barry goes after him. The two of them run through the streets, and we get this really cool fight scene here. We see they fight across the city. Barry finally beats Zoom, who tells him to embrace his anger, and when Barry hesitates to deliver the death blow, another Zoom arrives, kills the first one out of nowhere, and Barry realizes that the first Zoom was a time remnant, and the original Zoom tells him that he's almost ready before speeding up. So, if you remember, the original Zoom was there before. I don't really know, but basically, the original Zoom tells him he's almost ready before speeding off, and, so that was a very interesting way to start the episode, the way that started, but you can already tell that Zoom really doesn't have any regrets. He knows what he did, and he got through to Barry. So later, Barry and his friends, they attend Henry's funeral, and once the priest leaves, Barry can't even say anything. He's there to give the eulogy. He can't even say anything. Literally, Joe has to talk about everything that Henry's been through, and it's really powerful stuff, because, I mean, we knew that Barry really wouldn't be able to get over what happened to his father and whatnot, but this is even harder to watch. The fact that he can't deliver this speech, the fact that he can't say anything. He puts a rose in his father's coffin, vows to find Zoom, take from him what he took from Henry, and, I mean, we've never really seen Barry this deep before. I mean, we know, obviously, last season he was so intent on finding his mother's killer, but the difference now is that he knows directly who killed his father. He literally watched his father die right in front of him, and he's never going to be able to get over this. You totally see that here. Even though there are things that show that he needs to, you can tell he definitely, I don't think, is ever really going to get over it. We see that night at home, Wally brings Barry some food, and probably one of my favorite parts of this episode, believe it or not, is Barry and Wally connecting. I mean, it's clear that Wally wants to create a genuine relationship or friendship or whatever with Barry. Whatever he can, he wants to try to get closer with him. He wants to try to get on his side, and I like seeing that. Wally is a character that I feel has been struggling a bit, but fairly recently, they've been doing some really great stuff with him, and this episode, I think, was his best yet. We see Barry, though, isn't even hungry. Wally says that he had no idea that Barry was Flash. He offers his condolences, offers anything he can. Barry thanks him. He then tells the others that they need to come up with a plan to defeat Zoom, and Cisco wonders what else their opponent can do that may cause the destruction of Earth 2. And Barry goes out to get some air. Iris goes after him, and outside, Barry talks about how he finally had to come to grips with Nora's death only to lose Henry, because we remember that he finally accepted that his mother was dead. He had that newfound confidence in himself, and now it's gone because now Henry just died, and of course, it's interesting that, that happened, and now he wonders how he can find peace with that, and Iris says he's going to have to find a way or it will tear it apart. She takes his hand, Zoom runs by, and this is something I really love this season. The dynamic between Iris and Barry, it's been a whole other level this season. I mean, if you remember, Iris wasn't even I think she was part of the team at this point, but she wasn't really with Team Flash. She was kind of still finding her way. But now she really is with Team Flash. She's really become a big member of it, and I really do love seeing that. And she's become just as equal as, say, Cisco and Caitlin, which I really do love. So Barry runs after Zoom, finds Zoom waiting for him. He says that there's always more to take. Whether he kills Barry's friends is up to Barry. And Zoom says that the two of them have to race to see which... Basically, he wants to race to see which one of them is the fastest, because that's really what Zoom wants. He wants to make sure which one is the fastest, and if Barry wins, he gets to be the hero, and if he doesn't, then Zoom will kill the others, and he says that he'll be waiting and speeds off, and it's really intense stuff because you don't know if Zoom's actually going to kill someone. I mean, you don't think that they're going to kill off someone else after Henry, but think about it. Eddie died last season. Remember how crazy that was, and how game-changing that was as well. So, you know, Eddie died last season, which he might not be after this episode. We'll get into that, but basically, he speeds off. So the next day at Star Labs, the team tries to work out what Zoom is up to. We see Wells examines that magnetar that is being developed at Mercury Labs. It can act as a pulsar, and Cisco recognized the energy blast from his vibe of Earth-2's destruction. And obviously, you know, we know that Cisco had that vibe that Earth-2 might be destroyed, and in the end, the world might be coming for Earth-2. So with the right power source, Barry, it can destroy a universe, and Caitlin notes that Zoom boasted of how many Earths he conquered, and they realize that Zoom wants to take out every other world in the multiverse. So we're not just talking Earth 2, we're talking Supergirl's world as well. Like, if we want to really get in depth here, we're talking that world, we're talking, apparently we have Earth 3 now as well, and Barry realized that he has no choice but to raise Zoom, and basically he has to win, because, you know, he needs to make sure that he wins, because obviously he doesn't want to see anyone else die. And Joe actually tells Barry, you know, he confronts him, he doesn't want him to raise Zoom, you know, he feels that he's suffered enough, he feels like this isn't, you know, this is not his fight to have, and I can understand why they don't want him to fight Zoom. I mean, Zoom has already proven that he's kind of unstoppable, and at this point, they don't really think that it's the right thing for Barry to raise Zoom, and he says that they have the advantage because Zoom needs Barry, but Barry refuses to let another person he loves die. He's just not gonna let anyone else die after what happened to Henry. You know, after what happened to Henry, he's not gonna let anyone else die because of that. And Joe figures that Barry wants to kill Zoom, and Barry angrily says that he wants Zoom to suffer for everything that he's done. He figures that he has to do whatever it takes, and Henry stuns him out with a pull, and basically it's too late because Wells stuns him out with a pulse rifle, and it's honestly really sad to see, but you can understand why they want to do this, because as much as they want Barry to get that revenge and take out Zoom, they also am worried that he's going to die, and that he's not going to be able to take on Zoom, and Barry wakes up in a pipeline cell. He sees the others outside, and this is something I love. You know, we've really seen the other characters this season evolve on the same level as Barry, and that's something I've really loved about this season. And like I said, I don't think the scene's been as good as last season. I'll get into that overall. But I think something I think that's great is that all the other characters have been exactly on the same level. You know, Cisco, Caitlin, they've really developed a lot more, and you totally see that in this next scene. We see Job says that Barry's too angry, he'll lose without a plan. Well, it says that if Barry races Zoom on his own terms, then Barry will lose, and it's just not going to end well if Barry decides, you know, to go against Zoom, and they all decide together. And Wells says that it's for Barry's own good. They seal the cell, walk away. Joe wonders if they made the right call, and Iris is sure that this was the right thing to do. They know deep down that obviously Barry really did want to take down Zoom, and he really wanted that victory, but they also know that Barry just really suffered, and he might not be as focused, and I can totally understand what's going on. You know, Barry might not be as focused when he takes down Zoom. He could end up killing someone. He could end up doing a lot of damage to himself, and they just don't want to have to do, you know, to have him deal with that. You know, they want him to be okay. So Wells is packing in his room, and we get a scene that I feel is definitely inevitable. Like, we knew this was definitely going to happen, but it was also a question of really what was going to happen, because we know we had Jesse, we know we had Wells, but they're both from Earth 2. The only reason they were here was to take down Zoom. The real question is, were they going to last on this show past this season? That's what I thought they were going to do, especially because we know the show loves Tom Cavanaugh. We know Tom Cavanaugh is such a big part of The Flash, and we know the amount of fans that Tom Cavanaugh gets every single week, and how the show, I don't think is, you know, will be, a lot of people think the show can't go on without Tom Cavanaugh. I mean, I'm sure it can, but Tom Cavanaugh, without a doubt, is one of the best actors here. And then Jessie, recently, with all the development she's been getting, I was wondering if she was going to stay as well, but she wonders what happens after they stop Zoom, and I like that she asks this question. She points out that he cares about the people on Earth 1 a lot, but all of her friends are on Earth 2, and when it's over, she's going to go back home, but she understands if he wants to stay, because he's made a lot of friendships with them. You know, we know how close he's gotten with Cisco. We know how close he's gotten with really everyone. They all really become his family, and she just doesn't really feel there. We've always felt like Jesse doesn't really feel on Earth 1. But the only reason this didn't work for me as well as it did is because it just felt a bit rushed. I mean, it's not that we haven't cared about Jessie, it's that recently it seems like she really has become an integral part of Team Flash, and that she really wants to do something to help out Barry, and especially with what happens with her and Wally, it seemed like those two are going to get really close, and especially her having these powers, they never really got to touch upon it, and that's something I'm kind of upset about, that they didn't really get to touch upon her being Jesse Quick. She says that seeing him happy is all that she ever wanted for him, and I was like, alright, but I kind of just wanted to see her as Jesse Quick, because like I said, I thought there was going to be a Season 3 thing, that next season, they're going to set up Jesse Quick, and they're going to set up Kid Flash. We do get to see Kid Flash, sort of, in this episode, but we don't really get to see Jesse Quick at all, so I did feel this was an arc that was kind of underutilized. Now, do I really like Wells and Jesse, what they did with them? Oh yeah, I just don't really like this episode. Basically confirms that we're not going to see these two characters again after this episode, which kind of sucks, although, because of what happens at the end of this episode, again, I don't know, which we'll get into. But basically everything I say in this episode contradicts that in the final scene, which we'll get into. So at the industrial park, the team is in a position. Caitlin goes in, calls to Zoom, who's working on the stolen Magnetar. He runs outside to where Caitlin is waiting. She says that she came alone, and Zolomon reminds her of what he said if she left her, and Caitlin asks for the chance to explain. She says that she made a mistake and she's sorry that she abandoned him, but says that she didn't want to accept that there's a dark side to her. And as they move toward each other, Caitlin says she's ready to accept who she is, and Zolomon says that he knew she'd come around eventually, but tells her it's too late. Attacks, and then we get the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. copy moment when he realized that Caitlin's a hologram. Now, I don't think Flash intentionally copied Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but come on, we literally just had this same exact scene on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where Hive tried to kill Coulson and he was a hologram, and then Caitlin was a hologram as well. Not nearly as awesome as it was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I definitely will say that. I will take any day Coulson saying, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, over this scene with Caitlin. It wasn't bad, it just seemed like an exact copy of what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did. And I don't know if they tried to do that. I mean, we know that DC and Marvel really like to copy off each other's ideas. We've seen this very much. I mean, example, Batman v Superman is kind of the same movie as Civil War. I mean, they're both very different in many ways, but it is kind of strange that two big movies about two big characters, face them against each other in both universes came out in the same year. And it's not that, much different here. It just seemed to me too much like that scene. But I will say the scene was really cool, because we see Joe finds the boot, Cisco opens a breach, the gun jams, and Joe runs forward. He jams the Tranquilizer's darts into Zoom's shoulders, and I love how they're trying to do this without Barry. They're trying to find their own way to neutralize Zoom, because they feel they can. And Wells runs out, fires the pulse rifle, knocking Zoom back into the breach. It closed behind him, and he pulls Joe in with him. Now, we don't know where Joe is, what's going on here, how he's going to get out of there, but really interesting stuff. I love the way that was done, and I love seeing the team try to go on without Barry. Even though Barry wanted to take out Zoom, they want to try to go on without him, which I think was interesting. So back at Star Labs, Cisco tries to get a vibe with Joe without success, because Zoom is on the move. Obviously, we don't know where Joe went, and I like this episode, we don't really know till a little bit later, but Wells and Jesse then return, warn that Zoom set up the Magnetar so that if they don't do anything, then it activates. And if it activates, then all hope is, basically all hell breaks loose. And while he arrives, Iris tells him what happened. He's surprised they tried to stop Zoom without Barry, because Barry seemed like the only thing that could take down Zoom. But no, they tried to stop it without him. And Iris says if they got Zoom off of Earth 1, then they would close the breaches no matter what. And that would be it. They wouldn't be able to get back to Earth 2. And Wally refuses to lose his father and walks off because he wants to make sure that Joe is going to be okay. Obviously, he's just started to connect with Joe. It seems like these two are actually developing a father-son relationship, which I honestly really do like. It's one of the best parts of this episode, that you really do see these two are getting a lot closer, and pretty much the dynamic that Joe wanted them to be. But then we see on Earth 2, very quickly we see what happened to Joe. He wakes up to find himself chained up in Zoom's lair. He tells Zoom to kill him and get it over with, and says that he made sure that Barry won't race, and Zoom glanced over at the prisoner in the Iron Mask, and obviously that was the one thing we didn't know going this episode, is who is in that Iron Mask. And we do get a name, but we don't know what he looks like or things like that. He says he made sure that Barry won't race, tells Joe that explaining who it is would just confuse him. Joe tells him to do it anyway. Zoom says that after he gains gained his powers, he soon conquered Earth 2, and we finally get what Zoom's actual story is. How was Zoom able to do all this? We found he conquered Earth 2, he created Velocity 9 to make himself fast enough to travel other universes, and one day he found the prisoner on another Earth and found he was a speedster, and the Velocity 9 was killing him, and he searched for a cure, and the Speed Force had been sending its Wraith enforcers ever since, and Zoom was unable to steal the prisoner's speed, but then he saw Barry, stole his speed, he keeps the prisoner there at a trophy, and borrowed his name to become a hero, and that is Jay Garrick, and that is how he knew who Jay Garrick was. And I liked that we found out that Jay Garrick was a real person, and not just someone that Zoom came up with, because it did feel kind of weird that he just randomly come up with the name Jay Garrick, and of course he didn't. This is clearly the person he's kept prisoner, and that he was getting him his speed back, and in order for him to do that, he had to pretend to be Jay Garrick, and once he defeats Barry, he'll lock him up in a cage as well, and that basically is the plan, is that he's going to lock both of them up in a cage so he can get their speed, and become more powerful than them, and now we really know what Zoom's plan is, which I think was a very well done scene by Teddy Sears. He really killed. Let me just say, Teddy Sears is really great. Now, is he as good as Tom Cavanaugh? I don't know. Tom Cavanaugh just has this ultimate menace to what he says when he plays Thawne, and then of course when he's, regular Wells, he's kind of a dick, but he also is a lovable dick as well, so there's that. I really do like the contrast between those two characters, but I do think Teddy Sears has done a really good job. I've really loved having him on this show, and I think he did a really good job, especially in this episode. So Wally releases Barry because he knows that he needs his help, and I like that Wally is the one that saved Barry. I like that it wasn't Iris, it was Wally that did this, and the team realized that Barry's escape just as Barry runs in with Wally, and Wells insists that there's nothing they could do. There's really no way that they can just stop him, and Barry says that they don't get to decide for him, and Wally, if Joe is sacrificed, and he's gonna make sure that doesn't happen. Caitlin says she understands, reminds Barry that he was the one who kept her in check when she lost Ronnie, and that's true. I mean, when Ronnie was gone, when what happened to Ronnie, remember how erratic Caitlin really was. Now Barry kind of helped her with that, and Wells warns Barry that he will lose against Zoom if he's too angry, but Barry says they're running out of time, and he's gonna go ahead with or without their help, because he needs to take down Zoom. He needs to be the one to do this. They can't do this because he doesn't want to see them die, and it's just that part I really liked here. Cisco then rings up the Vibe Goggles, says that he'll vibe Barry back to Earth 2. They go ahead, and Barry finds himself in the other universe. He appears as an image in Zoom's lair, says that he'll race, but he wants Joe back unharmed. Zoom says that he'll release Joe once they race, and Barry agrees, and now we know that these two are gonna race. I thought that was awesome. We knew he was obviously going to agree to it eventually, but for a while we really weren't sure if they were going to let him make that decision, and now we know that he is going to race. So later the team goes to the industrial park, meets Zoom with Joe, and Wells says they know what his plan is, but Zoom says that Earth 1 is at the center of the multiverse and is the access point to every other Earth in existence, and once he triggers the explanation, it will destroy every universe except Earth 1. So that's really interesting. He doesn't want to destroy Earth 1's. He leaves them to say their goodbyes. Barry assures Iris and Wally that he'll save Joe. They refuse to leave Barry on his own, and Wells tells Barry that they believe in him, and Iris tells Barry to kick Zoom's ass, and Zoom returns. It's a really great scene, just seeing everyone have this confidence in Barry, and you don't know if Barry's going to win here. That's what I love, is that you don't know really what's going to happen here. You're hoping that Barry's going to come out of this in the right way, but you really don't know if he's going to be able to stop Zoom, and Zoom explains they have to run 500 times to provide enough power to activate the Magnetar, and once it's full, there is no stopping it. To stop Zoom, Barry has to kill him. That is the only way. Barry is to kill Zoom. That's how this ends. So the two speedsters run around the loop of the Magnetar, and as he runs, Flash creates a time remnant, and it frees Joe. Zoom realizes what he's doing, tackles the original, says that he's too late. However, the remnant keeps running, and Wells realizes he's trying to send the Magnetar out of phase to counter-react a destructive way. However, he realizes that if he does this, the Flash will die. But here's the thing. Barry, I think, is willing to die in this scene. The fact that Barry has lost Henry, I mean, the guilt's not, looming over him yet, but you can definitely tell that he is willing to die, and if he has to die, he will most likely do that. And in the loop, the remnant disintegrates, and the energy wave shuts down the explosion. Meanwhile, Flash attacks Zoom, finally takes him down. Zoom points out that Flash, the hero, couldn't kill him before and won't kill him now, and he doesn't kill Zoom. But what does happen is so much cooler, and actually really graphic the way it was done. We see the race soar out of the breach, Flash steps back, the creatures take Zoom and age him in a matter of seconds, hauling him away back through the breach, which is crazy the way that he just turned old like that so quickly, because we know how old Zoom is, we know how long he's been around and things like that, but they age him, they haul him away through the breach, and that was a crazy scene the way that was done, and Yeah, so Zoom's gone. I'm not surprised that Zoom's gone. Am I upset that Zoom's gone? I mean, no, I never thought that Zoom really had the charisma and power that Reverse Flash had. Sure, he was an intimidating villain, but I just didn't care about him in the same way I did about Thawne. Thawne, you felt genuinely bad for when he died because you kind of understood Thawne's motive. You kind of understood what Thawne wanted to do, things like that. And of course, Eddie died as well. Was so sad. Here, it felt good that he was defeated, but it just wasn't as earned, I think, as it was last year. But I really did like the way this episode ends overall. Back at Star Labs, the team explains the concept of time remnants to Wally because there are a lot of things that Wally still doesn't understand, which is kind of funny. I do like that they kind of use that as some fun stuff there. Barry figures that creating the remnant would draw the race, and they go for Zoom rather than him. And Caitlin points out the remnant died, and Barry says if he was willing to sacrifice himself for all of them, which we know he was, he says straight out he would have just killed himself. And Wells and Cisco are arguing, removing the Iron Mask from Jay, and I love that, even in their last few moments, they're still arguing. They realize that he looks just like Henry, which isn't really a surprise. I think we kind of knew when they were going to take that mask off that it would be Henry from Earth 2, and Barry can't take the shock. He can't even look at the man in the face because, he knows his father just died. He walks in the hallway crying. Joe joins him. Barry explains Henry said that his mother's name was Garrick, and that is really interesting that we found this out. Nora Garrick, was her name apparently, which I don't think we knew that till now. So that's really interesting, and it kind of makes me think that Jay Garrick could have maybe been a descendant of Barry. I don't really know, but we don't know much about Barry's family's history. We only know about his two parents, and I'm wondering if we're going to maybe get more into that in season 3. This episode kind of foreshadows that, but that's really interesting. So once Barry gets control of himself, he returns to the vortex, and Cisco confirms that there was a dampener in the mask, and Jay destroys it with his super speed. I love that he just destroyed it that way, and Wells says that they're on their Earth. The Flash's helmet stood for hope, and Jay plans to continue the sentiment. He puts the helmet on. He thanks all of them for saving him from Zoom, and Wells says it'll help him get to his home of Earth 3 via Earth 2 because that's where he belongs, actually Earth 3, and tells Jesse that they're going home together. So Wells and Jesse leave. It's a nice scene, though. We see Wells tells Caitlin she's a tremendous scientist, but a better person, and after they hug, Wells tells Joe to take care of the kids. He hugs Barry, says that he's a better man because of Barry, and Cisco says it'll stop, which is true. I mean, if you remember, when Wells arrived, he was the biggest dick you could imagine. He was overconfident. He was just a dick. He really was. I mean, there really is another way to categorize it. He really was just a dick, and basically, Cisco says it'll stop in a visit Wells occasionally, which I'm sure he will. I mean, we know the bond these two created. And Wells calls him by his first name for the first time, which is really cool. I mean, it was kind of cheesy, but I like the way that was done. Jesse says goodbye to Wally. They hug, and why are these two all of a sudden so close? I mean, I don't really feel like these two were that close. They had that one moment last week, and then now, and it just feels kind of, I don't really care, really. I mean, I want to care about Jesse and Wally, but I just feel like they could have done more with this character, and they didn't. But Cisco opens a breach, and Jay takes Wells and Jesse through, and those three characters depart. Jay's going to Earth 3, Wells and Jesse are going to Earth 2, and that's how we end things here. But then we get to the final scene of this episode, which is when we really get to the good stuff that I know you guys really want me to talk about. We see Barry watches the others watching TV together. He goes outside, and he can't even be there, really, because now the guilt's really, looming over him. Because he didn't really get time to grieve before, he had to focus on, did he want to fight Zoom? Did he not want to fight Zoom? Now that Zoom's gone, now he gets to deal with the grief. And that's the hardest part of death, really, is the grief. There's a lot of it, and his grieving process, you can tell that he really doesn't have much of one, and Iris goes after him, and I love this talk that Iris and Barry have. It just feels so earned. It feels like we've waited for this for so long, and Barry explains that seeing Henry's doppelganger should have made it easier for him, but it doesn't, and he wonders why he feels like he lost against Zoom, because even though they defeated Zoom, he feels like he lost, because why? He didn't get to take out Zoom, and also Zoom killed the person he cared about the most, and Iris says he's lost a lot of his life, and However, she figures that seeing where their relationship can go will give him something for a time. But I love that Barry says straight out, look, as much as I'd love to do this with you, I can't do this right now. He feels more broken than he's ever felt in his life. He needs to find some peace or he has nothing to offer. And basically, it's what he decides to do. Iris says that he waited 4 years for her. And Iris says that she'll wait for him as long as it takes. And when Barry gets back from wherever he has to go, she'll be there. With that, they kiss. And Barry says that he'll always love her. And it's a really nice scene. I think Candace Patton and Grant Gustin. I've said it before since the first episode. These two have always had chemistry. I mean, the second they came on screen in episode 1 of this show, I mean, they've always had this incredible chemistry. And it's just build and build and build since that first episode. And here, I think this is the closest that Iris and Barry have ever been. I love seeing this. I love that they're not a couple, but Iris is okay to wait for him. I do like the way that that's going. I think it's a very good direction to take the show. But then we get to what is insane, is the ending of this episode, because they make you think that Barry's just going to go into hiding. That's what they make you think, that he's just going to go into hiding, which, let me just tell you, that would have been a really lame ending if they would have done it, because that is exactly what they did this season, which I do think worked well. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I think it worked pretty well, but I would not have wanted them to do the same exact thing next season. What they do instead is the most ballsy thing that any show on DC has ever done. I mean, I have never ever thought of this happening, and this is just awesome. We see once Iris goes inside, Barry looks in the window at his friend, says that he has to do it, and he races off through time like, where the fuck is he going? Where is he going? What's going on here? He travels back to the moment, and I was thinking, alright, he's gonna save his father, but that's not where he does. He goes back to the moment where Nora died, he attacks and instead, he attacks Reverse Flash, defeating him before he can kill Nora, and we see Flash from last season, when he realized that he was gonna kill Nora, and Flash assures Nora that he won't hurt her, says that she's safe, so Nora's alive. We see Flash from season 1 is erased, which means the Flash never happened, and that is how this season ends, and oh, holy shit, guys. I mean, I was honestly in shock. I did not realize really what Barry had done. I did not realize really what happened. I mean, really, this is just insane, really. It's crazy. And I don't think you guys realize what Barry just did. This one action does not just affect the Flash. It affects these last 2 seasons of Arrow. It affects Legends of Tomorrow, and it affects Supergirl even. It really affects everything in the DCU, and it's such a great decision. Why? Arrow hasn't been as great. I know a lot of people have said that. Legend of Tomorrow hasn't really been working as well as it should have been. And they already said it's going to be very different. The possibilities for these shows next year are just endless, really, because we have no idea what's going to happen on The Flash next year. What happens on Arrow next week, tomorrow night, it's kind of irrelevant now because The Flash just erased that. So all of his memories of Barry are going to be gone because I already know what happened. Barry just created the Flashpoint Paradox, and in that world, the Flash has never been born. The Flash has never been something in Earth 1. I don't know if he's there in Earth 2, but in Earth 1, there is no Flash, and I think that's going to be very interesting as well, what's going to happen with that. Do I think this is going to last forever? I don't really know. I don't really know if this is going to last forever, but I think that is basically going to be our story next season. That's going to be so cool. I can't wait to see where that goes. How is Barry going to deal with not having his powers? Because, like I just said, Barry, I think the reason he looked at them is because he was really thinking, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to change everything? And I think he knows the moment that things, were ruined in his life was that moment that his mother died, and then it was just been a recurring cycle. And Barry, for once, did something selfish, which he doesn't usually do. He always does something selfless, and for once he did something selfish, and honestly, it feels very earned. It feels like it was time for Barry to actually do something that doesn't just benefit, member of the team, it benefits himself, and it's something that I feel that Barry's eventually going to regret doing, but it is incredible to see, and now it makes sense. How did they get Jay Garrick on Legends Tomorrow next season? That's how. How did they get Hawkman Legends Tomorrow next season? That's how. Because all the stuff we saw in Legends Tomorrow, that did not happen, guys. All that stuff with, Cold and Heatwave and things like that, and, Len and Mick, all that great stuff. Yeah, that didn't happen. The stuff with Sarah, that didn't, the stuff with, the Firestorm, that didn't happen. None of that happened. Ronnie could still be alive for all we know. Eddie could still be alive. The possibilities are just endless here. I don't know if Iris is going to know who Barry is. I don't think she's going to. There's really just so many possibilities, and I love that. I love that we don't at all know where next season's going to go. It's such a ballsy direction. I absolutely love that. And let's talk about the season overall, because no, I do not think the season's been as good as season 1. Why? I don't think they focused as much on Zoom as they should have. There was a bit too much focus on, metahumans and taking them down, and then introducing these new characters who I thought were good, but characters like Jesse just never fully developed, and characters like Wally, it took me forever to latch onto Wally. You guys know, you remember when I hated Wally. I hated Wally when he was first introduced. It took me, I think, till the Earth 2 episode to really start to latch onto Wally as a character and be like, alright, now I kind of like Wally, and now I like where they're headed with him. You guys remember that King Shark episode? I was so pissed at Wally, but eventually Wally did get better. Jesse's a character that I think could have been really good. They just didn't really do as much with her, but really, like I said, possibilities are endless. I don't think they focused as much on Cisco's vibing. I think they should have focused on that a bit more. I think they focused, I think way too much on things that just didn't matter as much, like introducing these metahumans. It's good, but a lot of it did kind of overcloud the overall feel of this season, and a lot of Zoom did feel very one note. Now, I don't know who our villain is next season. I feel like Barry is our villain next season because he's now made this decision, and now he's basically screwed himself over, and I think he knew that doing this was going to change a lot of things, and he knew straight out that he should not do this, but he didn't want to change it. He didn't want to look back. He did it regardless, and I love that. I love the show went in this direction. When it's a very ballsy direction, it's a very unexpected direction, but again, it's a very earned direction. I feel like this is something that we should have seen coming. I never thought they would do this. I mean, I thought they would do this eventually, but now it's crazy because what happens on Arrow? Is that changed? Like, a lot of things that are changed on there. The idea, I mean, we remember that timeline that Barry erased where, Oliver and Felicity broke up. Barry wasn't there to erase that timeline. So there's that. There's the fact that we don't know about our two things like that. Harrison Wells is still Eobard Thawne, so there's that as well. The amount of stuff, I mean, just think about this entire show. Nothing in this show has happened, but it doesn't feel like, oh, nothing happened. It feels like it made total sense. Everything has gone wrong for Barry. Nothing has gone right for him. He has gone through this entire show being a selfless man, doing all these things for other people, and it hasn't gotten him anywhere. So now he's going to completely start over and try to basically, turn his life around. But Barry clearly did not think this out, which I do like, because this is something that I don't really think you'd think out. When you do this, when you do something like you want to turn your life around or make a rational decision, you don't think things through. That's exactly what Barry did. He did not think through what he was doing. Now, I think he did kind of, obviously by looking at his friends, but he did know, what this was going to do, and now he has to suffer the consequences, and what those are, I'm not really sure. I did start to read what happens in Flashpoint Paradox. Apparently, Henry dies of, a heart attack, so there's that as well. Nora's alive, though. That whatever happens, Nora's alive next season, which I can't believe, but just the amount of places we can go, the amount of stuff we can do next season. Now it makes sense how we can do this 4-part crossover, because to me, it seems like we're going to get episodes like this every week next year. I mean, really, what it seems like they're really trying to do is expanding this universe and trying to intertwine things as much as they can, which honestly I think is the best thing to do, because, you want to eventually get to that Justice League stuff. I mean, the idea of Flashpoint Paradox is that the Justice League was never created, but we're not in the Justice League yet. The Justice League was being set up for the movies, and I don't really know if we're ever going to get Justice League on TV. The most we'll get of that is Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and then the Legends. That's about as epic as we'll get, which I think is pretty good, honestly. Just the fact we're getting all those characters, I think is awesome to see. But Barry's screwed, really. He screwed himself over. Arrow now, I don't know what happens on that. I mean, something has got to happen on Arrow where someone loses their memory or something happens, but definitely I'm expecting Arrow tomorrow night to have a sequence where things change or something's not the same as it was, and I just feel like it's a good direction for the show, for all of these shows to have, because they have been struggling a bit. I feel like it was intentional. Now, am I saying that it was right for the writers to kind of half-ass this season? Which I don't think this season was half-assed. I do think there were more filler episodes than usual. Like, do you remember that flashback episode in season 1? Did absolutely nothing for the show, really, except just give Iris closure with Eddie's death and then move us farther to Iris and Barry, which I eventually did become okay with, but at first I wasn't okay with. If you guys remember, I thought it was kind of dumb at first they did that. And then that episode where we had Reverse Flash come back really led to nothing. Things like that. Those episodes really slowed down the show, I think, and a lot of times it really was hard to tell if this was supposed to be a personal season for Barry or if this was supposed to be a Reverse Flash season. I don't think this was a bad season. I think this was actually a really good season. If I had to grade the season, it would be a B+, is what I grade it probably. I don't grade TV shows, though. You guys know I grade them on Rotten Tomatoes, but I don't grade them on YouTube videos. But anyways, guys, I'm going on for too long. I am in shock that the show did this. What happens next season? I don't know. I don't know what happens next season. You're gonna actually try to get me to predict what happens next season. I honestly, I don't fucking know, guys. I have no idea. Disregard everything I said in my Legends Tomorrow review because I don't think anything I said in that's gonna happen now. I mean, Rex Tyler's out there, but I don't know what happens. I don't know if those characters are gonna be there. I don't know, what happens with, I don't know if, if Mick is gonna be as developed in last season as he is this season. I don't know what happens with Wally and Jesse. Honestly, I don't know anything. My head is spinning, guys. I don't know if there is an or two. I don't know anything about next season, honestly. And I love that. I love that I don't know anything. I love it. I'm going in this completely blank. I think it's a good direction to take for the show. But overall, guys, what do you think of this finale? I thought this was a really good finale, definitely. I don't think it was up to par with last year's, but that ending really saved this finale. I don't think this was at all mediocre. I really don't. The idea that Barry couldn't take down Zoom, I did think made a lot of sense, because Barry, in the end, he just couldn't kill Zoom. He just wasn't as fast enough as Zoom. I totally understood that. I like that Zoom, he wasn't able to kill him in the end. I like what they did with Wally. I thought that was really good, but now I don't really know where that goes, so we'll have to see what happens with that. Is Barry ever going to get back to that time period? I have no idea. I mean, he literally just, attacked Reverse Flash and said, don't kill her. So, Reverse Flash is now loose. I don't know what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting. But overall, guys, guys, that was finale. Love to hear your thoughts on it. What do you think of the season in general? I cannot wait for next season. I am literally hyped out of my mind for it. I don't know what happens, but, your guess is as good as mine at this point. But I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for the series, mid-season. I don't know what it is at this point, but this season of Awkward, more like the Lacus season of Awkward. As you guys know, I stopped reviewing it. I have a very good reason why. Hopefully, these last few episodes haven't been terrible, but you guys will see why I stopped reviewing Awkward. I'm still watching it, but tonight's the series finale. I don't know if it's a series finale. It could even be a season finale. I honestly don't know what it is. We'll have to see what happens when we get to it. But anyways, guys, I can't get over what just happened, really. I can't get over it. But overall, let me know what you guys saw this episode. I'll have your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in the next video, like I said, which will be for Awkward. Things are gonna be crazy next season. I cannot wait for it. I am so ready for this Flashpoint Paradox season, and I am so game for just completely starting over. I think it's a great idea. I absolutely love that. The show was never bad. I don't think it was ever bad. I don't think the season was ever bad either, but I do think it makes sense to start things over, turn Barry's life around. It's a decision that he really didn't think through, but it definitely does make sense. I really do love that. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Awkward. I know I keep rambling on about that, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.